Hello and welcome everyone. This is Nitesh Mishra from Federation of Indian Export Organizations, popularly known as FIO, India's apex trade promotion organization. And you are listening to the Voice of Exports, India's first exclusive podcast for EXIM community. On this podcast, we bring top performers from the sector who not only inspire but also reinvigorate among you to become one of them. Welcome to another episode of Voice of Exports, India's first audio podcast on exports, which is an initiative of FIO for its member exporters. Today we have in our program Mr. Raksha Kuslani, MD, Bottle Oil Tools India Private Limited. Welcome, Ms. Kuslani, to our program. First,
Thank you very much.
First, I'd like to ask you about your company and how it started, its product, its services, all these.
Sure. So happy to be here and excited to showcase our contribution to Indian exports. The company was started by my father in the 1980s. So my father actually was a veteran in the oil industry. He spent about 65 years of his life in the oil industry. Started his career as a drilling engineer in the oil field of Oil India, Assam Duliajan, and went on to then open his own company. And he was representing about 26 companies, international companies in India.
Yes.
And it was, I think, around the mid 1980s that Baker approached him and said, "Why don't you start manufacturing in India?" Which is when my father set up Bottle Oil Tools. It was at that point Baker Oil Tools India Private Limited. Baker first time, and not only did they get into a JV for the first time, shareholding, showing their trust in my father. And so the company was conceived in the mid 80s, set up around 1989, and Baker actually then they gave up their shareholding in 1995. So we've been a family run company since then. And,
Okay.
Yes, and we then kept the acronym of Baker Oil Tools, so we became Bottle Oil Tools India Private Limited. And we have been around 40 years. We have built a brand. I am very proud to say that we're competing with the big four in the global oil industry for our scope of product. And also, I was just looking at some figures this morning that the total export of goods from India is about $420 billion, of which engineering goods are $110 billion. They were in FY24, and there was a 6% growth in FY25. And I'm very happy to say that 90 to 95% of what we of what we invoice is exported.
Yes.
And we had a 30% growth between FY24 and 25. So it's a very good feeling, extremely exciting
Yes.
to keep getting, a little larger share and to be able to say that contributing a little more each year to even the incremental exports from the country abroad. And of course, we're, targeting all the GCC countries. There's been a lot of geopolitical changes over the decades. So we're now looking at, we're actually exporting to about 60 countries.
Yes.
And we've grown, and we huge repeatability of orders, of customers. We're pre-qualified in various countries.
Yes.
And we're a recognized R&D unit by the Ministry of Science and Technology.
Yes.
And we've also just got our first patent a couple of months ago. So growing and excited and contributing and looking ahead in every which way.
Yes, that was quite an insightful introduction about your company and the products which you are into. So the next question which I'm going to ask is about the challenges which you have faced during the process of exports.
Right. So I will start by first complimenting the government and the various process reforms that are happening, because a lot of things have become faceless and thereby easier, quicker.
Yes.
But of course, challenges remain in a country like ours. I think that's part of the growth process. And so it's worth mentioning those challenges. One, I would say, is the EDPMS and IDPMS, which I'm sure all exporters face. Some of the other regulatory and compliance challenges, there's the bank has to close cases after getting the bill of entry. That doesn't happen. Our guys have to keep going and sitting and pushing for those things. So that's one challenge.
Yes.
The other big one for us, and more so in the recent past, has been the IGST and also the export incentive refunds. So that delays there disturbs our working capital, and so I would point that out as definitely one system inconsistency.
Yes.
And then, of course, because of these geopolitical changes that have been happening, logistics is a huge thing. So supply chain disruptions because of the Red Sea, for example. I mean, 60% of our exports in FY24 and 25 have been to Algeria.
Yes.
And so the rerouting costs us more, plus, the deliveries take longer. So when there are delays, obviously we are hit with liquidated damages by our customers. So that's definitely been a challenge in terms of the global things that are happening. Another local, India related thing for us has been a challenge for us has been the withdrawal of the subvention scheme. So, with the bank interest rates, we as exporters get a packing credit from the bank for our working capital. And there was I can't remember, 2 or 2.5% subvention that we were getting, which has been withdrawn in April this year. So that makes, and also I'll mention that along with that, in parallel, what's happening is that the markets globally are becoming very, very competitive.
Okay.
And everyone is trying, the end users, all the E&P companies are trying to save costs. And so for us, all suppliers like us, the margins are decreasing big time. And if we're having to pay more interest rate, but give better, more open credit and longer payment terms to our customers, the two things just don't, they're like two pieces of the puzzle that need to fit rather than moving further apart. But that's actually what's happening. And I mentioned one more thing, that anti-dumping duties on steel. So for us, I would say 90% of our raw material is steel.
Yes.
And steel bar we are able to source in India, but tube we're largely importing. And the kind of anti-dumping duties and the regulatory systems, there's BIS standards, it's just frankly become such a headache to import steel. And we don't have an option because we're a very niche industry, and we have to we have to buy steel API certified mills owned institute, and our industry is governed in terms of quality management by the API. If we don't have an API license, it's like a liquor license in a bar, right? So to comply with API licenses, we need to buy from API certified mills, but importing is becoming a nuisance. Sourcing, like I'll give you an example. We use a lot of 13 chrome material, which is high alloy steel. And to buy that in India in tube form, we have to we have to buy a minimum order quantity of 50
Okay.
tons.
Okay.
Whereas our requirement is anything from 4 to 10 tons, depending on the order. And it's not an inventory we can stock, because with every order, that spec changes, the size changes, the wall thickness changes.
Okay.
So the anti-dumping duties, I believe, for our industry really need to be re-examined, especially on 13 chrome. And lastly, I'll take 30 seconds more. This might sound like a small thing, and it's actually traffic, and all these things have become drawing room conversation these days. But I will say that we're located in Manesar. A lot of fabulous infrastructure development has happened and made, given us ease of working, like the Hero Honda flyover, the Dwarka Expressway now, and all of that. But right next, 100 meters away from our plant, highway was to be built there 3 years ago. They blocked the highway. It's taking us much longer to get to work. And you can imagine 300 people are reaching late and fed up to work every day because of some issue between the local government and the panchayat and all. So I feel, in these industrial areas, if those things can be looked at with a little more care, it would be very, very helpful.
Ma'am, talking about your challenges and issues which you have faced and the key learnings during your journey of exports, what advice would you like to give to companies similar to you, or in general looking at exports, and especially all those new and budding entrepreneurs who wants to come to the field of exports?
Well, I would do that from a very, very positive base. And I would say that let's join hands with our government, with our Prime Minister. He is doing a fabulous job of positioning India in a very powerful and energetic manner globally. And I think if we join hands with that initiative and really focus on making in India. So, one thing that my father always said, for example, for us in the oil industry, is that Botil is not here to provide nuts and bolts and spares for equipment that the big four American companies are making. We're here to provide the actual product, and we make really good quality product. We've created a brand. We're a household name in the oil industry. So I would say that let's go out there, all the budding entrepreneurs, existing exporters, and not cut corners. Let's make quality our primary objective
Yes.
and the foundation of everything that we do. And I believe that profits, revenue, all of that will increase if we're ethical, if we're quality focused, if we have engineering excellence, and we have we can really make use of our competitive edge in terms of our the cost of manufacturing in India.
Okay. When you talk about introduction to FIO services, what made you seek us out in terms of our services?
Well, I think my commercial department will be better equipped to answer that, but I believe it was through DGFT, and because our exports have been growing. I mean, when we set up this company, 90% of what we were doing was for the domestic market, and today, 90 to 95%, like I mentioned, is for export. So FIO, it was essential for us to have a platform like FIO, and I believe we got the exposure through DGFT. And it's been excellent because we have both our commercial and finance teams are often attending your training programs. We get your policy updates. You are enabling interaction with other government authorities like RBI and customs. So it's been very, very useful.
When you talk about the challenges as with regard to the global environment, you may be knowing that tariff wars are going on, India's FTA negotiations, BTA negotiations, trade disruptions, global supply chain disruptions happening. What kind of impact do you see it on your industry and the kind of product which you are into?
Yeah, so I don't claim to have too much knowledge on the macros, but I will say that we're still sort of waiting on the sidelines to see how the disruptions will affect us. I mean, the obvious ones I've already mentioned, like the Red Sea, the vessel rerouting rather, so diversions there. I will give you a small example of a country like Iraq, and I'll sort of just circle back to the whole point about quality and learnings in this business. And like you asked in the previous question, the advice that one would want to share.
Yeah.
So I say very proudly that a country like Iraq, in their tenders, they actually specify that goods from India are not, that we do not allow sourcing from India, China, and whatever one or two other countries. So we invited them, and a delegation came in 2023, and they pre-qualified Botil. So their tenders still do not open. They don't have an open invitation for Indian companies, but they have now allowed Botil. So their tenders actually say Botil. Now that said, because of the geopolitical changes, we got pre-qualified a year and a half ago. But there haven't been any tenders because Iraq is also just waiting. They've kind of shut a lot of rigs and they're waiting to see what happens. Trump has gone and done a huge deal in Saudi, for example, and got them to invest, promise certain investment in arms deals, etc. So Saudi is cutting down on rigs, is what we hear, and we're right now waiting to get into Saudi. We're in the process of getting pre-qualified. So definitely there has been an impact, but I will also say that about 60% of our exports in the last 2 years have been to countries like Kuwait, Algeria, Serbia, Croatia, all these countries. And from these particular markets, we don't see an impact yet. So let's just see what happens. But definitely, like there is a turmoil and there is a volatility. And the other obvious thing is steel, right? Because steel prices, there's a huge potential for that to get impacted.
Yes.
But the good thing is for us right now, for India, is that the India-China relationship seems to be changing for the better, considering the relationship between US and China. So it's so not linear that one can't really draw a flowchart out of it. But yes, there is an impact. The oil industry is definitely impacted. Crude oil prices are as low as 63, 65 now.
Yes.
But we're hoping to ride the wave, and I have a lot of faith in our government. I'll say one more thing about our industry, which
Yes.
is that
Please go ahead.
the American Petroleum Institute does not allow us to do business with sanctioned countries like Russia, whereas the Indian government is gung ho about Russia.
Yeah.
So we kind of see that impact because we have a huge potential market share in Russia, but we're not going out there because we're governed by an American authority.
Yeah.
And there's, at multiple levels there are impacts, but I would say that the growth potential, even as on date, is for a company like ours. We're looking to, God willing, double our turnover within the next 20 odd months.
One very last question I would like to ask you, because you have been in this field. In fact, your company has been in this field for a long time. Anything which you would like to highlight as a learning lesson for the new budding entrepreneur or for the overall export sector as such, which you want to highlight? Please tell us.
So, there are two principles on which we have always run our company. One is that happiness is a very important part of doing business, whether you're producing for the domestic market, whether you're selling biscuits or you're selling, oil industry, high tech products. But keeping the space happy is important. And I think HR is the biggest element in that. We grow, we exist, we grow only basis, and we dream and we have ambitions only basis the human resource that we have. And I'm very proud to say that we have a fabulous team. We all get a lot of happiness just working with each other. So that's another piece of advice, that keep your workspace happy, look after people, and people then really become a part of your brand and a part of the family. And I would also say again that, business by nature is cyclical, especially more so in the oil industry. So one just has to have the appetite to ride the wave. Ambition should be founded on growth, technological ability, ethics, good quality. And and I think for the new generation, I would say that sthirta bahut zaruri cheez hai.
Yes.
I know that these days in CVs, if you've been in a company for 5 years, people wonder what's wrong with you. And I'm proud to say that our oldest person here has been with us for 41 years.
Great.
So yes.
Thank you very much for being so candid, so insightful in your approach, Ms. Kushlani, and being so responsive to whatever questions I've asked you. Thank you very much for joining us in this show. Thank you.
Thank you, and my pleasure.
Voice of Exports podcast by FIO aims to provide important information and views on foreign trade, especially on exports, which will help both Indian exporters and importers. Any statements made by an exporter, importer, or an importing company in this podcast as guests reflect the views and opinions of that individual or the company. This podcast does not constitute an endorsement by the FIO of the individual or the company, his or her or its employer or affiliated entity. The specific information or views provided, resources mentioned, or products or services endorsed or offered by that individual or the company, his or her or its employer or affiliated entity. FIO assumes no responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or timelines of the information provided by the guest or the company in this podcast, or for the decisions made and reliance on any information provided by the guest or the company in this podcast. We thank you for listening to this episode of Voice of Exports podcast service brought to you by the FIO. For more information on how you can start exporting, please visit our website www.fio.org.